Hi there. I'm celebrating. It's almost 2012, and with a bit of Spanish wine. I think it's a very good year for Spain. It's going to be a brilliant year for Spain. They're going to be completely bankrupt, but who cares? You don't need money, you need sunshine, you need energy to get your wealth. And they have a good experience now. They have all kinds of electricity generating solar power plants near Seville that I visited last year. And that's why I'm celebrating, because it's almost 25 years ago that the first concentrated solar power plant was built in America. It's not the first in the world. Basically, the first solar power plant was built in 1912 in Egypt, and it was built by an American, Mr. Schumann, and he powered a little steam, or quite a big steam pump with it to irrigate cotton fields, which would be a very green way to grow cotton, very acceptable. But he was basically overrun by the whole oil thing with Iran and BP, and everybody thought, well, this is fantastic, let's go carbon. In the 80s, of course, you had the oil crisis. That was when basically the people from the Middle East realized that what they were doing, and were a little bit more used to the riches that they were enjoying, and they doubled the oil price. That's basically what they did. They said, we want a bigger cut. And I think things that since then, that has been a reoccurring theme from the Middle East. They basically were bought out by the Reaganites. And Reagan said, well, climate change, I don't really give a fuck. He had 3 reports telling that it was a dire thing and that 2 degrees was very dangerous. And he did just assigned a political scientist and told him to write that we'll find solutions in the future. You know, if you want to hear somebody telling you that, then you have to check out Björn Lomborg. And if you ever meet him, you can slap him in the face for me. I'd really very happy to do him and kick him into the. If he ends up in Amsterdam, we just throw him in one of the canals, and then hope that some steel boat just passes by, so he hits his nose really hard. No, there's no good. There are solutions, but you have to start doing it. And one of the solutions is concentrated solar power. So the solar power plant of Kramer Junction, US, is now almost 25 years old. SEGS1, which is really a good reason to drink some wine. I have better bottles, but this is just because I'm not going to drink so much. And but you know, amazing thing is that plant is still operational. You know, anybody that talks about concentrated solar power and tells you that it's not good, it's expensive. Oh, yeah, it's years into the future that we're gonna achieve anything with BS, bullshit. Slap in the face, kick in the balls, throw them out of your, get them out of your sight. You know, don't walk with these assholes, because there's a SEG1, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 68, 69. There's 9 of them. And they're not the only ones, of course, around the world. There's many of these power plants. Some of them are fantasy. I wrote an article once about an Indian guy writing about this, giving a lecture in India, writing about solar power plants in the Middle East, and the thing didn't exist. I looked it up. But, you know, it's such a thoroughly tested energy source. And it's currently powering air conditioners in California, because of course the sun shines at the height of the day and people turn on their air conditioner, and well, for once they're not using carbon energy and they're not polluting the planet running their air conditioners. But there's plenty of room around Kramer Junction, because these power plants, they occupy well, the size of a small airport, I believe, that kind of terrain. It's a lot. It's a big thing. I cannot really look it up at the moment, but so that's concentrated solar power with parabolic troughs. It's a complete no-brainer. If you are in California and anybody starts moaning about energy and starts moaning about little turtles in the desert, shut them up. You know, if you want to have wealth, do it like that. You can go look at it. You can drive to Kramer Junction, and it's just, I've been there in these power plants in Spain, and well, it's shiny. You don't look at it too long, because there's mirrors and there's sun. And it's humming a little bit, and you hear some steam maybe, but that's it. It's like geothermal energy. It's exactly the same thing. You build a plant, it runs. and then you have to keep it up. Like it moves, it has moving parts. So so you redesign them. You have 25 years of redesigning and optimizing these plants. It's impossible for that to be unlucrative, and it doesn't make any sense if these plants are still running, if they would not be lucrative. It's only the banking system that really forces you to pay back things in 5 years. Why? Well, that's their central planning, 5-year planning. More they don't. They don't know what's going to happen to the fuel prices. They don't know what's happened to the economy. They just don't want to do that. So, well, fuck them. Do a 10-year write-off. Nuclear power plants, they're written off in 30 years. Try that with a concentrated solar power plant and you're out of trouble. Because it pays itself back, I believe, in about 8 years or so. See, that's just different measuring sticks that people are measuring new renewable energy by. Why? Because they are the ones in control of the credit. They have the oil credit. If you want to build a power plant, you have to have oil, you have to transport it and stuff. That will remain like that for a long time until you have solid electrical heavy transport, and you have, for instance, solar mining, solar steam powered mining, and solar powered steel refining and stuff like that. That will come. That will just take a little bit more time because there's so many assholes that like to suck on the teeth of not the credit of Bernanke that McKaiser might be talking about, but simply on the teeth of the oil wells. I thought I'd talk about solar things, then I have something else to talk about, which is, of course, solar panels. You might think that there's basically one type of solar panel, and then there's thin versions of that. So you have like solar panels and you have thin film panels. Well, actually, there's many types, but it's amazing how you can have, let's say, the uniformness of the industry. So we have monosilicon, we have polysilicon, we have amorphous silicon. That's all silicon. Silicon is sand. It's the oxygen is taken out and then it's purified and then it's sliced. It's put in little cells, and then people said, well, we only need a very thin piece of that, so we make a very thin slice. And that was very hard, and it took like years for them to achieve that, millions and millions. And then they said, well, maybe we could just grind it up and make a little paste out of it, and we will sinter it, and then we have amorphous solar panels. Okay, well, that worked. So you have monosilicon, which is 15-16% efficient in converting solar energy to electricity. And then you have let's say polysilicon, which is 14%, and then you have amorphous, which is 11% efficient. Those are 3 silicon types, and those are basically the ones that you find most usually. Of course, there's many other options if you understand what the solar panel does. It basically it takes light, it hits something, and then electrons start flying around, and you have to catch them in order to you have to build some kind of semiconductor, which means that electrons can only go one way and they cannot go back. Because if they start flying around and they go one way and they cannot go back, they end up in a higher, let's say, reservoir, and they can flow back. And that's solar panel. Well, guess how many substances have electrons flying around when light hits them? Almost everything has that. Good examples of things that don't have it is glass, because photons fly through glass. There's no electrons. And the opposite is silver, which is interesting because it's very cheap at the moment. I suggest you buy some. The complete opposite is silver, which basically does have electrons flying around, but there's so many of them. I don't think it will work. Anyway, it reflects a lot of light. It's not really relevant at this point. But any color material, if it's red, green, blue, black, carbon, will absorb photons and will have electrons flying around. So if you can make a semiconductor out of any of these materials, or combine it with other stuff, so you get a semiconductor, you have a solar panel. So there are copper solar panels, which you can simply make. If you take a piece of copper, you put it on the stove and you wait until it's brown, and you have a solar panel. It's not very high yield because copper's sensitivity to light is not optimal, but if you make a copper indium selenium solar panel, so you combine it with other stuff which tunes the sensitivity to light, then you can make a very efficient solar panel, which is the first example of, let's say, an inorganic, mineral-based or metal-based thin film solar panel, the copper, indium, selenium solar panel. Now those are coming onto the market at the moment, and they're a very good buy. Why? Because first of all, they're 20% cheaper, because they're of course much cheaper to make. They're not 20% cheaper to make than the normal solar panel, but about, I guess, 60% cheaper. But anyway, that's not all. People want to make a profit, so they only take down 20%, which makes them more attractive. But second of all, they're 20% more productive. Why? Because people had a chance to really tune the sensitivity of these solar panels. Tune to the, let's say, the most prominently available photons in solar light. And with normal solar panels you cannot do that. Silicon doesn't allow you to do that. Or maybe only with a very highly energetic process. Apparently it's not being done. Otherwise, these things exist for 25 years as well, so somebody would have changed them. It's easier to make them the way they are, which is a very high energy process, which means that you need lots of coal to burn lots of coal and buy and sell it. So solar panels, silicon solar panels, are very good for the carbon economy. At least for 4 years of carbon burning in every solar panel. Thin films, copper, indium, selenium, take 1 year to earn back in terms of energy. So they are much better buy. But that's one thin film technology. The other, for instance, is let's say inorganic or organic dyes, which are basically organic oil-based, not biologic. There was basically, because the way, once you start looking at the world in that through the eyes of, I need a substance that has a color, and then I need to catch those electrons. It's very easy. So somebody said, well, we take 3 industrial available dyes, a red one, a green one, and a blue one, or something like that. We mix them up. There's a paper about it. I should look it up. And lo and behold, that generates all kinds of electrons based on the photons that are being absorbed from the different parts of the spectrum. And you can make a thin film solar panel out of that, and that's been tested and it's been done, and it's highly efficient. It's not being made, it's like somebody is like, we can breathe. That would be brilliant. We don't have to choke anymore, but we won't do it. It will take 10 years of research to start doing it. That's how things always go with these type of inventions. Somebody says, well, of course, we can make thin films like that, and then investors will come in from the carbon credit system. They think it's a brilliant idea. They will try to move it around a long time without doing anything, because that makes a lot of money without any effort. So the patent gets more expensive and expensive. The more idea gets more protected. The big plants are being made. Subsidies are drawn from countries and all that stuff. And then if it really comes to making a factory, then for instance, they'll make very small versions of it, even though they could make football fields and let's say stadium-size solar panels. They'll make very small ones to power your Walkman or your MP3 player, your iPod. That's cool. Of course, that's not cool at all. That's stupid. That's dumb. It's not using the capacity yet. But anyway, that's happened to Tanaka or something like that, solar panels. I'll link to an article I wrote about it where you see several types of thin film solar panels. But that's the let's say the inorganic or the organic oil-based or chemical, but non-biological. But you can also make them with biological substances like, I would say, the red coloring of wine. It's not red for nothing. It's because it absorbs certain types of light. And actually the funny thing is that these, for instance, certain types of teas, so I have to think about the name of the tea now. I'm always a little bit amnesic if I'm talking about these things. But what was that? Like hyacinth and all these flower colors, they are all accepting photons and creating electrons. And if you catch them, you can do it right. And what they usually do is they take some titanium oxide, which is also photovoltaic, and you put a layer on them, and then you can catch those electrons. anyway, it's a little bit complicated. These things they're called Grätzel cells, and they used to be like 4% or 3% or 1% efficient, which is not a lot. But by these days they can make them about 14% efficient. But for the price of it, you know, I have a little kit at home where you can make some tea, and then you have to concentrate it, and then you have to put it on the titanium oxide cell, and you can make your biologically dye sensitized solar cell. Of course, those are not very durable. That's why you would like to use these chemical dyes, because they can last a long time. But amazingly, of course, I've looked at this topic, and I'm going over 15 minutes again, so I hope this thing doesn't break when I try to upload it. Is really the big hit will come from carbon, carbon nitrate. There's many other substances, but carbon, of course, is black. Why is it black? Because it absorbs massive amounts of photons. Anything that tries to get through it doesn't get through it, as opposed to a glass. It's black. And if you combine it with nitrates, nitrogen, you get a very tough, very hard substance, which is also a semiconductor and a photovoltaic like silicon. And people are working on that. And that's really something, I think, when that escapes the research capture, one can almost say, when somebody gets his hands on some of the stuff. And I try to find it, because it used to be an easily sold material, but I cannot really find it very easily, because if you grind it into, let's say, very small particles, and you make a paste out of it, you can basically make a solar panel out of that. Of course, it's way too easy the way I describe it, but I think the most interesting option, because you have a carbon that generates lots of sunlight, almost all of it, and then makes electrons available. And the only thing you have to do is find a way to take that band, that electron band jump, and turn it into so make a semiconductor somewhere, and make sure that that electron that jumped out of the carbon stays somewhere where you can use it later, or where it starts flowing around, and then you have a solar panel. Anyway, this is one of my first videos of 17 minutes and 28 seconds, and I don't even know if this is going to be uploaded correctly, so cheers to Californian solar power and Spanish solar power, and I hope you have a brilliant 2012, literally.